Hello, this is your official introduction to the SoundForce SFC-mini V4, a physical controller for Minimoog-style plugins. So the basic idea of the SFC-mini is it's a controller, right? So the software is running on my computer, but I have a physical one-to-one interface for it. So I can feel out the sounds in a way that I would do if I had a hardware synth. And to be sure, it changes things when there is a physical controller for you to have a relationship with. Because I have made music for over 25 years. And I can say with unfortunate confidence that I have never in my life lost hours of time messing around with a mapped MIDI controller that did not have one-to-one controls. But I have absolutely lost entire days messing around with synthesizers that have one-to-one controls with the sounds I hear. The simple reason for that, if all of the knobs are available to you, then it is possible to become sort of one with the engine and be like, I want that exact thing to happen. And then you know exactly which control you reach for. That is only possible, in my opinion, with a one-to-one interface. I think it's how you develop flow and make sound design a pleasure. Why the Minimoog? Well, the Minimoog is arguably the most important synth of all time. Appropriately enough, the Minimoog really became the template for what a synthesizer became post-1971. And so how appropriate to have a thing that is basically the very model of the synthesizer interface. You have a mixer here, and we have the ability in this to blend 3 oscillators together. The third oscillator can be linked to the root note here. And we can choose different tones for the oscillators and tune them. Oof. And then we run it through a filter, which can sing song, which we have bass compensation for on the Mini V from Arturia, so we don't lose bass with high resonance, which is a thing that the original has. And then we can shape the sound, both the filter and how it is applied. So the filter will hop around. And we can shape the overall notes and add release to them, shared by the decay knob, so that we can have a long sound like this. And maybe I will do it with saws, and maybe a few less oscillators, a bit higher up. Nice long attack, so that there's a slow onset and a nice long release. I want it to be polyphonic, so I can push a button to make that happen. We can start to make pads. Well, maybe we want basses. We'll knock all this down. Oof. There we go. And let's add a bit of drive. And we go from a pad to a bass. And much more besides. And I can do all that without touching the mouse once. So what's new in the SFC-mini V4? There are a bunch of predecessors to the SFC-mini, and Nicholas from SoundForce wanted me specifically to point out the old versions are still supported and still work just as well as they always have done, and they will still continue to work just so long as MIDI exists, which, given that MIDI is 42 years old and still going strong, I think we're safe because the principles by which these work don't rely on weird technology. They just rely on MIDI mapping, which all plugins have. But the reason for this to exist was kind of two main things. One was to sort of update the look and give it this more like vintagey, sort of somewhat more authentic style. It both has different shaped knobs, less like the old style, which are like on the SFC-8 that I have here. And also the typeface just gives it this more authentic vibe, a bit more 70s looking. But the other main thing is this interface using these LED ring lights. And this is what Nicholas is proudest of. What this allows for is a really, really powerful integration. And at the moment, the best plugin that supports it is the Arturia Mini V4. I can open them up and I can push this sync button and the lights on the hardware update in time, in real time. So if I grab, for example, the oscillator frequency range here, if you can see, you can actually see the LED ring lights moving in real time. So the plugin is talking to the controller, not just the controller talking to the plugin. That's a uniquely Arturia Mini V4 thing, but I should stress again that this works with every Minimoog-style plugin. And then there is a thing called dump, where the controller will send its controls to the software and then the software will update so that the software looks like the controller does. Another feature here which works for Arturia Mini V4, but not currently at least, other plugins, is that there is MIDI Catchup built into the device with 3 different styles of catch-up behavior, and you can choose them by just pushing this button. The other thing to say about it is it's really solid and metal. The pots are bolted to the panel, do not wobble. They have an extremely solid, authentic feel, in my opinion, much befitting, really, the thing that it is actually based on. So let me show you how it works when you've actually got like a Minimoog style set of plugins in your DAW. Well, here I've got this little thing I was playing with. And so I have 3 Mini V4s. And if I go to an instance of Mini V4 like this, when the plugin loads up, it actually talks to the interface and updates it. Happy days. Now, if I want to go to this second instance, if I just arm recording on here, and play it, I hear it, but I don't see it on here. So you just push this button that says sync. Now what happened just there was that the cutoff knob obviously hadn't updated because this is not like a motorized controller. And so this is how it handles the jumping in Mini V4 specifically. I've got the smoothing mode on at the moment. What smoothing does is it does this clever thing where it kind of has a little sort of race with the controller itself. Like, so for example, do you see the drive control is up on the controller and I can see it's down on the interface? If I turn it to the right, then the control actually sort of races to catch up with my fingers until they become locked 1-to-1. And same with the volume knob. I turn this down, it sort of goes faster on the interface to catch up with the controller. And it's this really nice halfway house between an immediate jump and catch up, because these are the other ways it could work. So jump is as it sounds. If I was to move the cutoff on my plugin here, but then touch the actual physical control, it jumps straight to where it is on the physical interface. And then pickup is where it doesn't change until you hit the original value. So if I was to turn the drive control down here, I can wiggle the drive control and nothing happens until I turn it right to the bottom, and then I pick it up and then take it with me. So it supports all 3 of these types of control. I personally really like smoothing. it works in the heat of the moment is quite often you won't load up the interface of the plugin. You'll be too busy working on the sounds themselves. You'll be like over here, doing something with my like squidgy bass sound, and then I want to come to my sort of weird synth pad, and I won't want to load up the interfaces. I'll just want to come and tweak these. And so all you do is you arm recording, you hit sync. But you don't have to hit sync. You could just do this. But if you want this thing where the LEDs show you what's going on, you just hit sync. It's nice to get a little bit more info about what's going on. So how do we set up a plugin? Well, let's try the UA Minimoog. Now, I should say there's a really nice like online manual that Nicholas has made that talks you through how to set this up. And it's always just like a one-time thing. Get them set up and then they should work. And the way it works here is we go to this control panel and basically you choose the type of plugin you want it to work with, i.e. which of the Minimoog-style ones. I want the UA Minimoog indeed, and go send plugin mode, then boop, it should update and it says, hey, I'm in UA Minimoog mode. If I then come back, it talks us through this one-time setup that we do for this plug. And the thing we have to grab is this mapping preset, this little JSON file, which is like a little MIDI map that I need to load into the plugin. Whoop, MIDI, load MIDI mappings, and then I point it at the JSON. Now, oh look, it controls it. This, just to stress, is a one-time thing. You do this once, and then all instances of your plugin that you load ever again will have this applied. And now this controls it. Now what we might like to do is dump. Boop. And look, what happened was that the SFC Mini then sent all its MIDI data to the plugin. So now it doesn't make any sound, but that's because it is set up not to make sound. I should be able to make it make sound if we do this. There we go. 2 oscillators. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I'm actually just losing myself playing around with this plugin now. It sounds really good as the UA one as well, obviously. I mean, this is the only officially licensed one. What a nice thing to have a physical control for this. Because I think this just, I want to stress this again. A plugin means a lot more to me if I can play with it like this. This is so profoundly different to mousing around with a plugin. We have 10 fingers for a really important reason, which is that we are manual creatures. Because even though I can mouse these controls, I won't do that for anywhere near the same length of time. And I can't lose myself in the same way. When you start to use a physical interface, I think in your head, you stop thinking about how I'm going to do something. You're just going that now, that now, that now, that. You can actually be a computer musician that has the ability to have that one-to-one relationship with your sound design that you can't have unless you have one-to-one controls. So if we understand the sort of core Minimoog controls, you might well ask, what are the extra things at the bottom of the interface? Well, there are some controls which are designed for various plugins that have extra controls built into them. For example, pan spread is a thing that's on the GeForce Mini Monster, and there are also other plugins that you might want to map it to that have a pan spread control, which is always a nice thing, which spreads alternating notes in the stereo field and just sounds really nice when you do poly stuff. There is a rate control, which can be used to control the rate of an LFO for those that have an extra LFO. We can see it is, in fact, changing the rate in the corner here. Where is it? Oh, there it is. it's hidden on the Mini V4 by default. But you see, we now can control this and change its shape, very nice, between two obvious ones, as well as tempo sync it to the session. I think these things are generally self-explanatory, but it is worth bringing your attention, I think, to some of the little extras in here. Because of this integration with Mini V4, we also have the ability to change presets up and down in the bank that you're in. Ooh, that was nice. And of course, you can just reach out and touch them. Of course, you can still come up into the interface and pick things. So these little LEDs indicate the new positions and what things are on and off. I think the sort of main things to point out are the user 1 and 2. And these are just totally generic controls, which don't necessarily have any one particular need, but you can map them to do different things. And so the way this might work, for example, is you might be like, I want in this sound, I want this to be the reverb amount. And as an example way of mapping, you come into here, into MIDI, and then hit learn, click the control, and then wiggle the thing that you want it to control. If I turn learn off, now this controls the wet dry control. You can make this mapping available in other instances, so you can then build a relationship that you determine with a particular effect. So how does it work if you want this to control a Minimoog plugin and something that isn't a Minimoog plugin? Well, there is a generic map that's in the available maps here, generic. And according to Nicholas, generic is the most kind of neutral mode. And neutral is a good word for this because there are some quirks where you find, depending on the way that a plugin is designed, then, for example, a Minimoog plugin might have off be a value of 127 and on is a value of 0. And the exact opposite is true in another plugin. This is why we need these kind of plugin modes, so that the controller behaves in the way that that particular plugin expects with all of its individual quirks. So there's this generic map. However, you can, and I have just tried, for example, load the Mini V4, and then let's see if we can map it to something like the MS-20. And so the way that mapping works is that you do this thing of learning and then touching the controls that you want it to become. Not all of the controls are on here, obviously, but key ones are. And in the instance of, okay, hang on, there's a high pass filter, then I could use user 1 and 2. And indeed, that's what I've done. So if I arm this, now, as I adjust this, now I can control the high pass with this and the low pass with this. And I've got, VCO mixer, that's common. Pulse width is this sort of oscillator frequency dial. And then we've got oscillator ones like wave shape. So let's just get this to be less resonant. So now I can have 2 oscillators. Tune the second one. Flipping heck. Mate. So, of course, it's different. This isn't the same interface, but what this shows is that there's a lot of commonality. You can map the core things, and so in one session, have this map to a few different things. Because, of course, we can then flip back to this. Sync. And now we're just controlling the Minimoog plugin again. The SFC Mini is available now. Links below. Thanks very much for SoundForce for having me do this. Happy sound designing.